Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the RepPath Podcast. Today, guys, we got a really good show because we're going to talk about interview myths. And I know a lot of us, we listen to a lot of well-intentioned but misinformed people. So today we're going to debunk some of those myths. But before we get into that, as always, guys, any questions that you have, please from this moment on, submit them into the chat and we'll address them about halfway through the show. For all of you, again, I say it every call, but guys, if you're really serious about getting into this industry, do not wait anymore. One of the things that I hear from everyone is that I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing and eventually things are going to change. It's never going to change. I'm not sugarcoating this anymore, guys. If you're struggling, you're not getting calls back, things aren't happening, it's not going to change. So you have to do it yourself. And the first thing you got to do right now is go on RepPath.com and set up a call with me to sign up for the RepPath Academy. It's just that simple. If you really want to break into this industry, we're going to give you the tools, we're going to give you the guidance, and we're going to help you break in. But we need you to put the work in, and I need you to reach out to me so we could get you signed up. So go on RepPath.com. You could see the link here going down the website. You could see the companies that we work with. And then also you could see those testimonials from reps that had success and broke into the industry. So please, guys, don't waste any more time. Reach out to me, shoot me a DM, schedule a call. We'll help you get booked, and then we'll help you get into this industry right away. Lastly, if anybody wants to see a copy of this podcast, because I get this every week, Joe, I missed the podcast. Can I get a copy of that? Any of the information that we're going to show in this podcast and previous podcasts, anything we have coming up, please go on our YouTube website, our YouTube channel, the RepPath Academy. Subscribe. It's 100% free, guys. So you can get all this wonderful free content that we produce every week. So without further ado, guys, let's jump right into today's call. Give me a sec. I need a drink of water. Okay, so today we're talking about eliminating a lot of those myths during the interview process. Okay, and it's very important, guys, because like I said at the beginning, many of you out there, you're getting information from well-intentioned people. I don't think anyone is really out there trying to sabotage, your approach to the interview process, your approach to medical sales. A lot of times they hear through someone else, and it's like the game of telephone. By the time it gets to you, the whole message is skewed, totally different from what they really meant. But we want to go through some of these myths that I constantly hear that reps tell me because, we have many members in the academy, but I also train, I've been training people for years, and it's these same myths that keep popping up. So I want to be very direct, and just get to the point on some of these that aren't true. Some of them may be true, but they're just twisted a little bit. But I want to make sure that you guys have the right information. Okay. Because a lot of times when you listen to these myths, the worst thing that can happen, it can discourage you. And I don't want to see that. I don't want to see any of you not try to get into this industry. If you don't want to get in this industry, that's fine. But I want you to base it on facts, not myths. Because that is the worst thing to do, is that listen just because someone told you something. It's going to get you frustrated, get you discouraged, and then you give up on your journey. You give up on your dream. That we don't want. If you don't want this, that's one thing. But don't let false information do that to you. So we're going to dive right into the first myth. And that is, if I have the right background, I get the job. And that is 100% not true. Now, while having a good background is very important, I don't want anyone to misunderstand me. If a company is asking for 2 years of B2B sales experience with proven sales results, and you have 2 years of sales experience from companies like ADP, Paychex, Enterprise, all amazing companies, and you have sales success, that is great. But a lot of you think just because you check that box, you're going to get the job. You're a shoo-in. Or even some experienced sales reps. A lot of times you guys get laid off and you have 5 years of experience in the industry, selling in that specific specialty of cardiology, of neurology, anesthesia, whatever it is. And you think just because you have all that experience, you have more than what they're looking for, that you're going to be the number one target. You're going to be the top choice. It's going to be up to you to get the job. That is not the case, guys. There's so much more that goes into this than just your background. Because a lot of people, they rely heavily on degrees. They rely heavily on brand names, titles, and that's not always the case. Because remember, hiring managers, they're seeing how you can handle rejection. They're also seeing, can you build relationships, and many other things. The whole point is there's so many other things that go into it than just your background. So here's 2 examples, guys. And, of course, we don't have time to get a poll here, but if you have someone with an amazing background and a weak interview versus someone with not that strong of a background, but crushes the interview, A has the weak interview with the strong background. B has the not so strong background with an amazing interview. Who do you think is getting the job, guys? It's that B candidate every time. That second candidate is going to get the job every time. So if it was just about background, just realize this. Why would they waste their times with interviews? They would just say, send me the best resume and we'll hire that person tomorrow. So I say this to you guys because I want you guys to be motivated by this, not discouraged. I don't want you to say, well, I have a great background. What does that mean? I shouldn't be excited about that. No, you should be very excited. But realize that the interview is the make or break point. The resume gives you an interview. The interview gets you the job. Resumes don't jump the interview and get you jobs. You have to crush the interview. So your background is important, but that is not what's going to get you the job. If you get face-to-face with someone and you're at that point where you're in an interview, realize no matter what your background is, that's irrelevant. Everyone's on an equal playing field now. It's how you handle that interview. That's what's going to guarantee you that job. If you crush that interview, it's going to increase your chances. But if you go in there thinking that you just have that great background, guys, you're going to fall short every time. So just to motivate you guys out there, it's not just about your background. The background can help you get an interview, but you got to really crush that interview if you want to break into this industry. So at the end of the day, the lesson here is it's your storytelling ability. That is more important than the resume. The resume is the starting point. But if you can't verbalize what's on that resume, if you can't verbalize your sales success, we get this a lot, guys. You have multiple President's Club winners who've won multiple awards. They get face-to-face and they blow it because they can't verbalize. How did you do that? Here's a simple interview question all of you with great backgrounds need to work on today. And a lot of you might say, oh, yeah, Joe, I'm prepared. I've answered that a million times. Did you really? Because some of you, yeah, I believe you do. But a lot of you don't. You're not ready for the simple question of when they look at your resume and see your sales success, Joe, that's great. Tell me how you did it. What's your strategy? What's your approach? What do you do every day to be successful? Simple questions, guys. This is about habits, routine, game plan. You need to be able to verbalize that and tell it in a story that's compelling of how you achieve success. That's what's going to get you the job. So work on that today. Your storytelling is even more important than that resume. It's not just about the resume. You need to be able to relay the messages, the information from that resume into a story. A lot of average reps read their resume. The top performers know how to tell a story. All right, so I think I beat that up enough in point 1, but that's my whole point, guys. Really work on that story. That makes it more important in the resume. That'll help you crush the interview, and that's what's going to help you get a job. Second myth. The interview is just about answering questions. Absolutely not, guys. So if you're going home every day, and just think it's memorizing the right answers. All right. All of us can do that. Guys, you could do it right now. Pop into ChatGPT, give me great answers to all these medical sales questions, and then put the top 10 typical medical sales questions. They'll give you good templates. They'll give you good answers. But if you don't know how to you can't just answer the questions. You have to treat the interview like a sales call. It's the same thing, guys. I say it every podcast. I say it on every episode. You have to treat the interview process just like it's a sales call, because that's how they're treating it. If you're not doing well in the interview, the reason why they're saying they're going to pass on you, because they're thinking, well, how are you going to interact with our customers? If you're not going to treat me like a customer, if you're not going to handle the interview process well, you can't get through this smoothly. How are you going to get through a sales call smoothly? Because that's what they're measuring it against, guys. So some of the things, you want to make sure that you're uncovering needs. A lot of you during the interview, if you're just answering questions, you're not getting anything out of it, right? You're not showing them, you're not trying to find out what their key drivers are, and try to position yourself as a solution. So do you have questions prepared? Sometimes you might have questions that come off the cuff because the conversation leads you that way. That's normal. That's what a sales call does. If you walk into a doctor, and you're just spitting out information, you're not asking questions, you're not going to find out their needs. You got to do the same thing in an interview. You got to ask a lot of questions to find out where they're struggling. What do sales reps do that they typically struggle with? Where's the company typically struggling right now? What are they looking for as a solution? And position yourself as that solution. Because if you can't, guys, what's the point of interviewing you? You have to get that mindset when you go into the interview that I am the solution. They need me here. And I'm going to tell them why. I'm going to let them know why I am the best fit. Guys, you got to be ready for that. A lot of times you guys ask questions during the interview, and sometimes they tell you, yeah, our biggest problem, is pricing. I don't know. I'm just making that up right now. And then you go, oh, pricing's a concern. And you put down in your notes, pricing. Okay. Guys, you got to dig a little bit deeper. You got to dig deeper. And then you also got to show them that you actually have had those challenges in the past where your product was priced higher than the competition, and you were able to do X, Y, and Z to overcome those challenges, showcase the benefits of your product, and then get a commitment from a physician where they eventually purchased, or got a commitment from a customer where you were the higher priced product, and showcase how you overcame that in the past. That's how you provide a solution. It's not just answering questions and that's it. No, it's a sales call, guys. So you got to view it that way and then be able to provide a solution. So you got to be uncovering needs. You got to be building rapport. That's another key thing, guys. You don't want to come into it like a robot, answer questions, shake their hand and say goodbye. No, it's the same as with your customers. You need to be building a rapport if you're going to be trusted by them for them to give you their business. So it's the same thing. Treat that manager, which you should be building before you even meet them. And we teach this in the academy, and this is why you're reaching out to reps and building a network that know that manager, that are going to bat for you. That manager feels like he knows you before you even sit down. That's what an effective interviewer does. You're building rapport. It's very important because you need that to do that to be successful with your physicians. And then lastly, a lot of times, guys, it's just simply closing. A lot of you answer questions, you get through the interview, you feel like you took the SATs or you took a test where you're like, I think I did really well. I feel good. I answered all the questions. I gave good responses. I think I really crushed it. My background says it all too. I checked off that box. I did well in the interview, and you forget to close. Guys, you're not going to get anywhere unless you close. I work with clients all around the country. One of the number one reasons good candidates screw up, they didn't close in the interview. It's very hard, guys, for a manager to move forward if you didn't try to close. And let me just talk about this for a second. Closing doesn't mean every single time for you to do well, you have to close and get an absolute yes, either to getting the job or getting to that next step. you got to at least give the effort, guys, because there's a lot of tough managers out there. They're going to keep their hands close to the vest. They're not going to tell you if you're moving on to the next round, or they're not going to commit and say, yes, you're our guy. We're definitely going to make you an offer. Great job. A lot of times they give vague answers. You're the first one we interviewed with. We still got 10 more people to meet. We're not making a decision until next week. You're not going to get an answer today. And sometimes they mean that. Sometimes they're just not going to tell you anything because that's the way they operate. But if you don't at least make the attempt and show you're trying to close, they're never going to offer you that job. It's very rare. And it's the same thing with your doctors. If you're not closing, guys, because this happens a lot, you become friends with doctors. Doctors start to like you, but you're wondering, why am I not getting the business? You're not asking for it. You think your friendship is going to get you the job, is going to get you the business. You think being nice is going to get you the job. No, you have to close. So same thing. It's all part of a sales process. If you want to get the sale, you got to ask for the business. If you want to get the job, you got to ask for the job and close. So 3 things that candidates do, great candidates do. If you guys want to write this down, number 1, they ask great questions. All great interviewers, they're asking great questions. They're not the one, they're the interviewee, and they're still asking great questions. So realize how important that is to ask great questions when you're the one that's being interviewed. Number 2, you got to control the conversation. And that means that falls hand in hand with asking great questions. Because when you're not in control, you're not asking any questions. When you start asking questions, that's when you start to gain control again. And trust me, hiring managers love that. I'm not saying, totally take over the whole conversation, say, oh, by the way, here's how we're going to do the interview today. I'm going to be asking the questions and, be an obnoxious jerk. No, but the whole point is the more that you're asking questions, you're going to have control because it's going to be a two-way street. That's the way a good interview goes. And that's the way it should go. This is your career. It's not going to just be all one way with them asking you questions and you not finding anything out about your potential next 30 years of your life, hopefully, even though that's rare. But you want to make sure you're asking questions. That'll help you stay in control of the conversation. And then lastly is just selling yourselves naturally, guys. The more you get in that natural flow, the more you're asking questions, you're going to uncover needs. And then you're going to position yourself as a solution to those needs. And that's how you sell yourselves. It's just that simple, guys. It's an art. You got to work on this. Got to work on these things. We can help you with this at the Academy. This is what we do. So some of you might be like, I don't know exactly what he means by that. Of course, we don't have time to go into all of this right now. Reach out to me, schedule a call. We could show you how this works, guys, but this is the process to stand out. Number 3, I touched on this a little bit. If they like me, I'll get the job. Couldn't be further from the truth, guys. A lot of you fall into the friends trap. James, have you ever seen, again, not a movie reference, but the TV show reference from Friends? I know you're
another Friends reference, Joe. You're a big fan of Friends, I guess.
I mean, so is the rest of the world in the mid-90s. But yes, if you're in your 40s and 50s, most people will watch Friends back in the day. You're still in your 30s, dude, so you get a pass. But
a lot of my friends watched Friends, but they were all girls.
I'm going to ignore that comment anyway. But there's one episode where Ross wants for Rachel. This is like one of the earlier years. And Joey keeps telling him, dude, you're screwed. You're in the friend zone. And he's like, you're too. And the other guy that she likes was a complete ass to her. And she was all into this, whoever I think he was like an Italian guy from, he was from Italy, wherever the heck he was from. Anyway, she was all into this guy who was a jerk. He treated her like shit and didn't like Ross because he was a friend. He was too friendly with her. And that is the same thing with medical sales. Believe it or not, guys, obviously you're not hitting on your doctors and trying to, become their boyfriend or girlfriend, but you do get in a friend zone with some of these guys, and the same thing in the interview process, just being liked. There's a lot of likable people. I mean, I get calls. We get 300 to 500 resumes on average for every rep, every opening that's out there that we post. Get hundreds of resumes, and when we get on a phone with a lot of these candidates that are potential, good fits, they're all likable. Everyone's likable. There's very few people that I get off the phone. I'm like, wow, that guy was a real nasty bastard. Everyone's likable, but the ones that move forward, bring more to the table, because these companies, again, you're going to be managing surgeries. You're going to be in the OR. How are you going to handle that OR pressure? You got a lot of stakeholders, especially when you get into hospitals where you're not just, the doctor isn't the only one that has to give an okay. You need the administrator in that department. You can have biomed. You can have tech support. You can have up to the CFO, CEO that have to be involved. You got multiple stakeholders. It's not just about being liked. You have to provide a solution and bring value, guys, to what they're looking for. So you have to uncover needs, just like you do in a sales call, just like you're doing in the interview process. Like I said before, if they're having a challenge in a certain area, great. How are you going to provide a solution? Number one, you're going to talk about your previous experiences and how you've done that in the past. May not be the exact same situation, but you got to show those transferable skills. But at the end of the day, you have to show that you're providing a solution. You're not just here to be liked. Because a lot of times the best reps, it's not, the manager doesn't, the doctor doesn't go, excuse me, yeah, we use Joe because he's really likable. That's not the case, guys. If I'm not providing a solution to them, if I'm not adding value, it doesn't matter how much I'm liked. They're going to use another rep or another product. Sometimes those obnoxious reps, that they could talk a lot or they're a little aggressive, and you're like, wow, that guy was really like, abrasive. How the hell does doctors like him? Because he's a good rep that brings value. Might be a little annoying, might be a little obnoxious, might be a little talkative, but at the end of the day, he's providing value. He's there. He's consistently showing up, doing all the other good things, being persistent, being reliable. Excuse me. But at the end of the day, he's bringing value, and it's not because he's liked. This one I don't really love. I'm going to skip that.
Joe, you mentioned that doctors aren't working with you because you're really, really likable, and you said that's just not the case, and I couldn't agree more.
Oh yeah, of
Joe
course
is not Joe is not likable, guys.
Of course you were gonna. I lobbed that one up to you.
I was surprised
you waited. Surprised you waited.
I was gonna let you finish your ramble, so
That's. I love you, buddy.
Set yourself up for that one.
I know I did. And I paused too, looking for my next note. And
that was my win. I jumped right in. I was like, all right, he's done.
Unbelievable. Okay, on to another myth. The recruiter decides everything. Now, that is not fully true, guys, by any means. At the end of the day, the hiring manager makes a decision. Okay, and even that's not always true, because there could be a VP that has to give the final say. There could be a director, a CEO. Sometimes there's multiple people that have an opinion here. But for the most part, we'll say the company is always going to make the final decision. It's not the recruiter. Now, saying that the recruiters are still very important in the process, because number one, remember, they have a relationship with these companies. They're important in the process. They've worked. I mean, sometimes you'll work with a recruiter who's working with a client for the first time, but that's rare too. More often than not, they've worked with these guys before. They have a good working relationship. A lot of the companies, they treat their recruiters, like they are an extension of the company, like they are a coworker. I know all my clients, they treat me that way. We have a great working relationship, or I wouldn't be working with them. They value my opinion. They respect my opinion. So don't get me wrong. If you don't, do a good job impressing that recruiter, you're never moving on to the next round. But it also, they do not have the final say. There's sometimes where I've gotten pushback. A hiring manager said, Joe, no, we really love this guy's background, and I would straight up, I tell them, they didn't do well in the screening process. No, Joe, but we really want someone with XYZ experience, so pass them through. That does happen, but that's rare too, guys. So at the end of the day, you still have to respect and work well with the recruiters because they are that middleman to get you to the hiring manager. So what some of the things that the recruiters are looking for, guys, and these are easy things if you have good habits. Number one is professionalism. So that's why when we start, and we really are harping on your LinkedIn profile in the academy. It's one of the modules we work on, one of the things we really want to fine tune that a lot of other coaches and organizations out there, they don't spend as much time on, because that's one of the first things that they're going to see. Once they get your resume, guys, we're going on LinkedIn. We're checking out your LinkedIn profile. And first thing I look for is your picture. Excuse me. I want to see a professional headshot. You don't have to spend a ton of money, but a lot of times you see people with that candid shot where they look good and all, and that's nice. But if you're going to get a professional role like this, where you're dealing with doctors, patients, clinical staff, clinical outcomes, life-saving, situations many times, I want a professional. I don't want someone with a surfboard, that looks good with a tan in the picture. You want a professional. So professionalism is key, to have, number two is communication. Sorry, guys. Give me a sec. Sorry. So communication is key. If we send you an email and it takes you 2 days, 3 days to get back to me, that's a red flag. They're always going to assume, guys, that you're looking at other companies. We know that. We know as recruiters, you're going to be looking at multiple opportunities. You got to see what's out there. I totally get that. But if you're not transparent, or if your communication is lacking, you're not getting back to me in time. Guys, we deal with so many people. Trust me, everyone falls into the same negative habits. When you're not getting back to someone, we know you're probably looking at another company, or you're waiting on an offer, or you're just not that into this opportunity. It's better to be transparent, because if you're waiting and thinking that the recruiter isn't going back to the hiring managers and saying, it took this person 3 days to get back to me, those are red flags. So if you don't have that constant communication, getting back in a timely manner, you don't have to get back in 5 minutes. But if someone sent you an email that we have an interview scheduled for you on Thursday, and it takes you till Wednesday to get back to me, odds are we're probably telling the company to move on with somebody else. Because the last thing we want, especially if you're showing bad communication, is for you to take that job. You get the job, the recruiter doesn't get paid yet. Most recruiters don't get paid till months later. You have to last at least 2 or 3 months at that company for them to pay you. So there's a lag time. So the worst thing that could happen there is that for you to get that job, and then 2 months later you quit. Now the recruiter never got paid. The company's pissed off. Everyone's pissed off. So when we see those signs where it's always a lack of communication, recruiters are going to move forward with someone else and look to push someone else. So if you really want these jobs, guys, your communication, whether you want it or not, that goes hand in hand with professionalism. Make sure you're getting back to them right away. It's just, you got to do the right thing, guys. Because trust me, the recruiting world, it's a small network. It's a lot of the top medical sales recruiters all work together. We all work closely, and bad candidates, their reputation precedes them. Trust me. If they know that so-and-so is a bullshitter, or this one doesn't get back to you. Oh, I got so-and-so a job, but then she screwed me at the last second and took something else. They're going to tell other recruiters that. You don't want to get that reputation. Make sure your communication is stellar, And then lastly is preparation. Guys, you have to prepare. It's the most important thing to do. This takes a less experienced rep and propels them over, reps with 10, 15 years experience. Because a lot of times those experienced reps, like I said at the beginning of the call, they start to get a confidence, or a little bit of an arrogance, like I've earned this. My reputation says, my resume says it all. No, guys, If you're not preparing, if you're not coming into those interviews, speaking with multiple reps, learning about the company, the hiring manager, what the challenges are, and positioning yourself as a solution and not building a business plan based on these conversations, trust me, someone else is. They're the ones that are going to get the jobs. So the ones that out prepare are the ones that are going to get the jobs. That simple. So I think we got time for one more, and then we'll move on to some questions. Last thing we'll talk about is more interviews means I'm doing great. Yes or no, guys? Okay. Typically means people like something on your resume. That doesn't mean you're doing great. All right. It could be you have a background that is attracting people, which is a great sign. It doesn't mean, though, you're doing great. Okay. Because a lot of times, you're getting many interviews. How many offers did you get? If you had 10 interviews and you got 5 offers, you're doing great. If you had 10 interviews, you've been to 5 final interviews and you haven't got 1 offer, something's up, guys. Sometimes we hit a little bad streaks. You do a couple of final interviews and they choose someone else. But if it's a pattern of over and over and over again that you're getting passed on, then you have to dig deeper. What is going on? Are you asking strategic questions? Are you closing like we talked about at the end of the interview? Are you telling strong sales stories? This is important, guys. They're going to ask you a lot of situational questions. And many of you don't answer these correctly. Some of you do an amazing job. But a lot of times when you don't move forward, these are some of the key things that are being missed and you have to work on so you can get the offers. Because at the end of the day, it's all about the offers. That's the most important thing. Well, I made it to the finals twice. Look, James, football guy, I'm not even going to bust him about the Jets, but you're obviously knowing the Bills' 4-year run back in the 90s. They made it to 4 Super Bowls in a row.
And still got nothing.
Got nothing, right?
Jets have more Super Bowls.
Exactly. Exactly. So the Jets haven't won a Super Bowl since what, 69?
Yeah.
Yeah. We're going on over 50 years. They're technically, in my book, still a more successful organization in a lifetime. They have a Super Bowl ring.
Yep.
Why? Because you have 4 first place, second place. There's no second place trophy. You lost. Nobody ever remembers whoever lost in the final round. No one cares. So
they kind of remember the Bills because of the wide right and the whole thing.
Wide right, yes.
But other than that, they remember them as losers.
Yeah, they lost.
Yeah.
They lost. So, and I'm not trying to be hard on everyone. Like, I think it's great that you're getting to final interviews, but if you leave another final interview without a job, you don't leave there that day going, oh, this feels good though. That was a $250,000 job that I just missed out on, but it feels so good to get to that final interview. Guys, that might happen once where you feel good. After that, you're going to be like, I don't give a shit. I want to get the job. So at the end of the day, it's about the offers. How many offers did you get? That's what you got to start measuring. It's not just about how many interviews you have. Because if you're not getting to the next level and you're not getting those offers, it doesn't mean anything. Or it means, even more importantly, it's an area that you have to improve upon. Now you got to figure out what that is and start working on it. So I'm going to pause here for now. James, any questions?
Yeah, we got a couple, Joe.
Beautiful.
I got Tiffany Hargrove. She said, my recruiter told me I need at least 2 years of B2B sales before any med device company will look at me. I keep seeing people say that that's not true, but then also seeing job postings that literally require it. Can you help clear that up? Because it's confusing as heck.
Yeah, and that's a great question. And the answer is it depends on the job. So the good thing that I'm happy that I'm hearing that you're doing, you're reading the requirements. That's the first step, guys. Most people do not read the requirements. They don't, because I could tell when I get the resumes because they're not a fit at all. They didn't even put anything in the email showing that they read those requirements, because if you're reading the requirements, you have to be reaching out to that recruiter, whoever posted the job, listing what the requirements are and how you're a fit for each. It's okay if you're not a fit for every one, but if you're not a fit for any of them, guys, don't apply to the job. So when it comes to, back to your question, needing 2 years. A lot of companies do ask for 2 years, but not all of them. There's many med device companies that they hire college students right after graduation. There's a lot of companies that hire just with an associate's degree and no experience. So it depends on the job. I will say this as a rule of thumb, because I know a lot of times people want some sort of, black and white answer. For pharmaceutical jobs, I would say the ones that I know 100%, but just to play it safe, 99.9 will not hire you unless you have a 4-year college degree and at least 1 year of B2B sales. That's pharma. Okay. So you have to know not only the job, but the industry too. So med device, they are more, open to hiring people with less experience. They hire many young college grads without any sales experience. And then when you go to distribution, there's a lot of companies out there that you don't even need a college degree. They'll hire you without a college degree. 1099 companies, majority of them don't care what your background is. If you could sell, if you have you have the grit, and I don't care, I'm just going to go out there and make things happen. What do they care? You're only going to get paid unless you sell something. They're not giving you a base. They're not giving you insurance. They're not giving you any, bells and whistles. So many of those companies will hire without any experience. So you really just have to read the requirements. Start searching for jobs that don't require 2 years. Start looking for those, put those searches in. You'll see them, guys. So make sure, I like that you're reading the requirements. The answer is it depends on the job, whether they want 2 years or not. But there's many, many jobs to make you feel good. Many jobs out there in medical sales. Very few, if any, in pharmaceutical sales, but device distribution diagnostics that'll hire reps without 2 years of B2B sales experience.
Courtney Matero, she said she watches Friends, which kind of, proves my point that it's a show for girls. But
thank you, Courtney.
Renee Castellano, my background is pharmaceutical, and I keep hearing that pharma reps are looked down on in the device world, like that pharma is seen as easy compared to device or capital equipment. Is this a real thing, or is that just people being elitists?
No, it is a real thing. That doesn't mean that everyone shares that opinion, but if you're gonna, the consensus with a lot of med device hiring managers, and not all, because I can tell you ways on where they will take a pharma rep. Majority of medical device hiring managers, they do look at pharma reps like they're lazy. Do I agree with that? No. I think there's some lazy pharma reps. I think there's some lazy device reps. It really depends. But they look at pharma reps like you're not in the OR. You're not dealing with the real stressful situations of working with a doctor and dealing with patients, not working sometimes till, after midnight, depending on some of these cases. You're not in hospitals at sometimes 6 a.m, before a case starts. You're typically working that 9 to 5, which many of us know a lot of pharma reps are not even working the 9 to 5. A lot of people say they are, but let's be real, guys. We know when you get out there, you make your calls. As long as you're hitting your number, no one's really going to pressure you that much. So they create those misperceptions or those stereotypes that all pharma reps are lazy, so they can't do device. It's not true. Okay. So what I would focus on, though, is I would utilize wherever your therapeutic skill is. So if you've been in pharma and you've been calling on, cardiology for 5 years, start looking at those pharma med device openings, because that's how I broke into the device industry. I had 5 years at Organon, excuse me, and I had strong pain relationships because I used to sell a pain medication, and I also sold anesthesia medications. So I dealt with a lot of pain specialists, both on the anesthesia side and the pain specialists selling those meds. And Boston Scientific, they hired me because of those, I had that strong pain background. Now, I was getting hired with a lot of other device reps, but they didn't care about that device pharma. They wanted people that had relationships in that specialty. Now, that's just them. That doesn't mean everyone feels that way. It doesn't mean that other members of Boston Scientific, it was just that manager at the time. But I would start there. I would start with, where is your strong suit? If it's cardiology, focus on those med device cardiology jobs. Because if you're just constantly going and trying to get jobs in device, and also read their requirements, a lot of them will put in there, they might have must-haves, and then a lot of times they have knockouts, like people they don't want, and sometimes they might say pharma reps. Guys, just move on to another job. Don't get frustrated. Don't say that's bullshit. Oh, that's, I'm such a better rep. They're really missing out. Guys, who cares? Screw that company. Go on to the next one. There's plenty that will hire. You just got to start with, what do you bring to the table? And if it's start with that therapeutic background and those relationships, that's going to help you break in. But unfortunately, it is a stigma that they put on pharma reps, a lot of these device guys.
We have Stephanie von Rudenborg. Can you explain why the same company will offer 1099 positions and other base plus commission? I am very weary of 1099, but not sure if I should be. Example, Stryker.
So Stryker is offering you a 1099 role. Is that basically what we're saying in that question, James?
It sounds like she wants to know why they're offering a 1099 role and base plus commission at the same time.
Well, it depends. I mean, some companies do that. I mean, don't forget, you can have a stud rep out there that has been in the industry for 20 years, knows every doctor in that specialty, and they could say to him, hey, listen, we'll negotiate with you. We'll give you 150 base, and give you, 8% of everything you sell. And it, could be a $400,000 or $500,000 annual income for them. Excuse me. And then it could be a rep that, also has a couple of relationships. And this happens too. So they can hire you because you have a relationship with the biggest doctor in the country. But that's really the only relationship you have, right? And they could go, okay, if you could give us that person's business, we'll set you up with a 1099. I mean, it could happen that way. There could be a million reasons why they're doing this. I'm just giving you some of the reasons, where they could just be after you getting those couple of relationships and getting business from them. And so they'll set you up with, basically, prove it to me. That's what the 1099 means, is prove it to me. We're going to give you a good commission based on what you bring in. And that's it. So sometimes they do different situations depending on what that individual brings to the background, and they leave it open-ended. And that's basically why they offer both the 1099 and the W-2 positions.
I guess she wants to know, she said she's wary of 1099 and wants to know if she should be.
Yeah. So the reality of 1099s, there's the weary part is there is no guarantee. There is no safety net, and believe me, guys, that's the scary part, but if anybody has that entrepreneurial spirit, if anybody really says, like, I'm an entrepreneur, or I can really sell, then you shouldn't be weary about a 1099. Because a lot of times the positives of 1099s, number one, you're going to be able to do essentially what you want. And when I say that, that doesn't mean you're going to go out there and give false messaging or, say this drug cures cancer or this device cures cancer and does things that it doesn't do. No. But we've all been in that position where your phone rings and it's your manager and you roll your eyes like, oh man, what does he want now? And you're so frustrated. I've been there, and you just have a pain in the neck VP or whoever it is that's reaching out to you. When it's a 1099, they don't own you. You're an independent contractor. So you don't have to rush to answer that phone. You don't have to do anything. So you have more freedom. I mean, you go out there and sell. That's it. They can't boss you around and say they didn't like the expense report you did or whatever. You're not expensing that. You're paying for it out of your pocket. So you have a lot of freedom. That's one positive. Number two, a lot of times with a 1099, you could work multiple jobs. Unless they have something specifically in that contract, a lot of times people work multiple 1099s and they do multiple things. So it could give you a lot of freedom. And especially one of the biggest benefits a lot of times the percent commission that they pay is very high. So I know companies out there that are paid up to 35, 40% commission on products sold. So majority of the times, the individuals that I've seen do really well in 1099s, those are the ones that don't care if they got to run through a brick wall to make a sale. They'll do whatever it takes. They will work their butts off, or it's individuals that already have relationships in an industry. So they know it's easy. They don't have to spend money on lunches, parking, all this gas, going back and forth to an office 50 times just to get in the back to see a doctor. A lot of times they got the doctor in their cell phone. They shoot him a text, say, hey, doc, I'm going to be in there on Friday at like 2:00. I want to just tell you about this new product. If that doesn't work, what's a good time? And it's that easy for them. So they can get business without spending much out of pocket. So a lot of times those good relationships are for those 1099s are for individuals that have long-standing relationships, or the ones that don't care. They don't need the safety net. They don't need the car. They don't need all the, the benefits. They just want to go out there and sell. Then it could be for them. But if you're really weary, and it's not for you, you really gotta think twice if you want to go down that path, because that's not a good place to start. But don't think just because it's a 1099 that all of a sudden it's a terrible, situation and it's not for you. You never know.
We have Fit Life by Marcus. Can we talk about the myth that you need a Rolodex of doctor contacts before they'll even interview you? I don't know any surgeons. I'm trying to get into this industry.
Yeah, no, you don't need a Rolodex of doctors to get hired in this industry. Does it help? Of course it does. Excuse me. But a lot of times, guys, especially for entry-level roles, they're entry-level for a reason. And, just to touch on one thing, a lot of times I hear that, why the hell do they call it an entry-level role if I need 2 years of experience in sales? I agree with you. Shouldn't really be called an entry-level role. It's an entry-level pharmaceutical or entry-level med device role. But a lot of times they do expect that sales experience, but it doesn't mean you have to have a Rolodex of doctors. They know that you're just breaking into an industry. They don't expect you to have a Rolodex of doctors. If they want that, they will put that in the listing, or they'll tell the recruiter, Joe, don't even move anyone through unless they have, a big book of business. Because when you get in the interviews, they could straight up ask you, who do you know? But a lot of times, guys, especially the entry-level roles, that is a complete myth. You do not need a Rolodex for a lot of those roles.
I got a fun handle, Velvet Cactus 88. Is it actually true that most hiring managers decide in the first 5 minutes of an interview whether they're going to hire you or not? Because if that's the case, it's kind of terrifying.
No, do not be panicking that hiring managers are sitting there and you're gonna win or lose in the first 5 minutes. Guys, like anything else, you always want to make a good impression. So don't take the first 5 minutes lightly. Still you treat the first 5 minutes like the middle hour and a half, like the last 5 minutes. Always trying to do your best to impress this individual. But it's not, I don't know any hiring manager that tells me if they don't wow me in the first 5 minutes, I've mentally moved on. Now, saying that, typically if you want to know if it's going well or not without them telling you, if you have an hour interview booked and they cut it to 20 minutes, odds are you didn't do well. I don't know many companies. Usually the longer the interview goes, the better it's going. Doesn't mean every time. But one of the things I will tell you almost every time, if an interview is cut drastically short, you did something, there was a major turnoff moment, because a lot of these hiring managers will give you the respect, especially if they have that time book, to give you that full hour or 45 minutes. But if they cut it short, that means something bad did happen early in the interview. But I don't know any it's not a rule that the first 5 minutes, if you don't impress certain managers, they're just going to move on. I don't really know anyone that does that.
I got Trail Runner Cat. I keep hearing that if you follow up more than once after an interview, you look desperate, but also that not following up enough looks disinterested. What's the actual move here?
Well, number one, you want to make sure that the simple rule of thumb, I'd rather have you look desperate, because that's nonsense anyway, than you not following up. If you don't follow up, you 100%, you're not going to get the job, because they're going to look at you. They can love you. If you don't send a thank you, not every company is going to just, X you out just because you didn't send a thank you, but that's not a good place to start, because they're nervous if you don't show that follow-up and that excitement. Number one, they're nervous. Do you really want the job? So they could be disappointed and go, wow, I really like this Joe Licata, but he didn't follow up. I'm afraid he doesn't, really want this. And they'll call the recruiter and say, Joe, can you do me a favor? Can you reach out to that person, and see where their head is at, and that's a bad place to start. But if you're also, you want to follow up regardless to show your enthusiasm, but that starts from the interview. So more importantly about how many times you should follow up, you should be getting that next step during the interview. At the end, you should be trying to close. If they can't close you, what's the next step? When should we hear by? Well, Joe, we're making a decision. We should know by early next week. Okay, so I'll follow up. Is Monday or Tuesday a good time to follow up? Yeah, Joe, follow up with the recruiter. They should be able to know something by Monday. Guys, set the table for the next steps. Again, like I said at the beginning of the call, treat it like a sales call. If you're not doing that, then they're going to say this person is not going to do it with their physicians. And when you're with your physicians, you have to make sure you're setting the stage for the next step. When are you following back up again? If they're committing to using your drug on a couple of patients, great. I'll be back in next Friday to get the update to see how those patients did. Or Joe, I'm going to book you. I got the next case. Follow up with me next week. Once I get something else on the schedule, what's a good day? Wednesday or Thursday? Confirm that next step, guys, like you would do with your customers. You have to confirm it in the interview, because that'll dictate when you're following up. But following up is a must, and the quick rule of thumb, it doesn't matter. Again, don't be obnoxious or reach out every day. But if you don't know when the next step is, you already failed in that follow-up process. Because you didn't get that information during the interview. And that's the important part of get it.
I have Nate on the grind. Is a 30, 60, 90-day plan actually expected at every interview now, or is it something people hype up more than it actually matters to the people hiring?
It definitely isn't expected every time. But this is where, again, this is what we teach at the Academy, guys. When you're going through the interview process, you're reaching out to sales reps. And you're not just reaching out to just find out, hey, do they like the job? What's good about it? What's bad? And just asking stupid shit questions. No, you're getting information that you can't get on ChatGPT or Google, and you're putting it into a business plan. The business plan is essentially your 30, 60, 90. What are you going to do in your first 3 months? That's what they're asking with a 30, 60, 90. It's the first 30, 60, 90 days. You can use a template of a 30, 60, 90, but if you just bring that in or leave it as a leave behind after the interview and it's just generic nonsense, no one cares about that. Now, if you create a business plan, a 30, 60, 90 that's specific, that is showing the doctors that you're going to target, the hospitals you're going to target, what are the GPOs? Where are the IDNs that you're focusing on? What are some of the real challenges? What are some of the real opportunities out there? And then put it into a business plan, into a 30, 60, 90. That's powerful. That's impactful. That you want to discuss with the hiring manager. But you need to get that specific information. Don't make it generic. But one way or the other, you're never going to know if they want that or not unless you ask. And that's one of the things that most people don't do. One of the biggest tip I'll give everyone on this call, free tip right now, send a thank you email before the interview too. You're still going to send the thank you afterwards. But if you send a thank you before the interview to that hiring manager, and show that excitement. I'm looking forward to meeting you this Thursday. Can't wait. Before we meet, is there anything else you'd like for me to prepare besides my resume? And sometimes they could say, yeah, come in with a business plan. Now, but unless you ask, you won't know. Now, if they say that, guys, it's go time. And you should be working on this regardless. So now you have a specific business plan that he asked for, that you created, that is actionable for that specific territory. Your chances of getting that job just skyrocketed. But if you don't ask, you don't know what they want. They might ask for something obscure. I don't know. But unless you ask, you're not going to know. You have to ask.
I have Danielle Forrester. Joe, I've sat on the hiring side of the table for a number of years, and the biggest myth I keep seeing candidates fall for is that enthusiasm alone closes the loop. What are you telling people about how to pair energy with substance in the interview?
Well, you have to bring both. I've seen reps that have great substance, but have no energy, no enthusiasm. If you don't bring that, guys, it's hard to hire someone. It really is. If you're not smiling when you're speaking to them, you're not showing energy, showing that excitement. It's the same thing if you're calling on a doctor. If you're selling a product and you don't have any enthusiasm for what you're selling, you see the good reps. They're charismatic. They move their hands. They're smiling. They're all excited to talk about their drug or their device. Guys, you get excited. You want to buy from someone like that. If you're listening to someone that's real monotone and has got a puss on their face and is just going through things real lazy and tired, who the heck wants to buy something from someone like that? So I think you need both. It's that simple. You need substance, but you got to bring energy. And that bringing energy doesn't mean being a cheerleader with pom-poms jumping up and down, guys. But smiling, showing excitement, believing in what you sell. That energy should come out. If you had the cure to cancer and you're with an oncologist, you should be so excited to talk to that doctor. I'm not saying everything we sell is a cure to cancer, guys. Of course not. But you should still want to believe in what you have to believe in what you're selling. Don't take a job just to take a job if you think it's a shit product. You have to really believe in it, and then that energy will come out. And then you combine that with substance. Everyone loves that, guys. So to answer the question, you have to bring both.
Last one I got for you today, Joe. Alicia 2121. Is it appropriate to bring notes to a medical sales job interview? I plan on bringing my 30-60-90 plan along with a hard copy of a resume, cover letter. Should I also bring references?
Bring it all. Bring it all. You never know what they're going to ask for, guys. But notes, definitely. We actually have a template that we give to our students in the academy that tracks their conversations that they had with other reps. So they have all their notes. They could show what some of the key challenges are. Whatever they talked about, they have everything. But you should definitely go in there with the notepad with a lot of questions and notes, because it'll show the research that you put into this, the time you put into this. And the more questions, the better, guys. But make them intelligent questions, not the stupid questions. Don't ask how many days you have for vacation on the first interview. You're not going to move forward if you focus on that. What's the PTO time? Guys, ridiculous. So have intelligent questions, maybe about the product, maybe about the hiring manager, maybe about what other successful sales reps, what are they doing? Whatever that is, but have everything prepared, and you can never get faulted for that. They're never going to say you came in with too many notes or you came in with too many intelligent questions, guys. Hiring managers love that, because at the end of the day, it shows effort. And effort means that you want this job. They want individuals that are going to put the effort in and really want to be here. So definitely do that, I suggest.
That's all I got for you today, Joe.
Awesome. Well, guys, great questions. Thank you. Thank you, James, even though you throw in your stupid digs every once in a while that I tolerate.
How did I not do that one? You gave it to me. It was like, here, alley-oop.
I did. And men like friends too. So that's another.
That's debatable. If you're going to say you're watching for Jen Aniston, I'll give it to you.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll accept
Courtney
it.
Cox too.
Jay, I'll give it to you.
But guys, honestly, all kidding aside, thank you guys. Another great show, great questions. If you guys have anything else that you want to reach out to me, please shoot me a DM, send me an email at joe@reppath.com. Any questions about the Academy, same thing, guys. We want to help you out. We want to see you guys break in. We want to minimize that frustration and minimize that timeline to help you break in. So click the link below on the screen, to set up that call and learn more about the Academy. Lastly, guys, for any of you individuals out there that are lobby members, please make sure that you're submitting the promo code Licata, Licata, Licata.
Can't even spell his own name.
Can't even spell my own name. And it's at the bottom of the screen there, guys. So please submit that with whatever questions you have, so you could get additional discounts. But thank you again, guys. Thank you, James, for making me mess up the last half of the call.
That's all my fault, of course.
And have a great week, guys. If I don't talk to you, we'll see you guys on Wednesday at 3 p.m. Take care.